All right, we're kind of concluding the little mini series on David and Goliath today, and last week we talked about how David had to use his own weapon. He had to use the slingshot. He couldn't wear what somebody else wanted him to wear. So he's got a young guy, slingshot, 5 stones. Here he goes to the battle. Now, this is what I want you to see today. So he steps forward. Goliath steps forward. All of Israel, including King Saul, is behind David. They're all discouraged and afraid. There's Goliath. Everybody behind Goliath is encouraged, mocking. They're living it up. My guess is the people behind David are probably ready to run. So instead of bringing their swords that day or wearing their fighting sandals, they might have brought their running shoes, because how much hope did they have in David? Probably none. So I want you to see the 2 parts, because what I want us to see today is God needs somebody. He doesn't need everybody. God needs somebody to stand up for his word. He needs you. God doesn't need everybody. God needs you to do what he's called you to do. Don't worry about it. It's very easy for me to get frustrated because that person's not doing this, or they're not doing that, or they're not doing that. And I know that sometimes God reminds me, listen, you do what I've called you to do. Because you know what God needs? He needs somebody. He needs you to play your part. So David is the guy, the only one in all of Israel who had faith, the only one in all of Israel who wanted to stand up for the word of God, the only one who refused to let God be mocked. He was the only one who had courage, and he steps forward. Goliath steps forward. Boom, there they are. And what we see is we see that Goliath comes out and he's mocking him. You can read the account. And in 1 Samuel 17, he says, what are you, a dog? Am I a dog that you come out here and, bring stones? And he's going on. It's trash talking. There's a lot of good trash talkers in games today, but Goliath was one of the best trash talkers there was. But even in the trash talk, I love this. David says, I'll show you some trash talk. David said to Goliath, he says, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down, cut off your head. Today I'll give your carcass of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. Wow. So Goliath was a pretty good trash talker, but when the Spirit of God came on David, it just rose up, and he says the whole world's going to know of the God of Israel. He didn't say, I'm going to beat you. He took it a step further and said the world is going to know that there's a God in Israel. And he says, you're going down, buddy. Rose up, and he was ready to go at it. He was pumped. And so, of course, they go out. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward him, toward the battle lines to meet him. I love that. Goliath takes a step, and David runs. You see, when you know that God's called you into something, you don't just timidly go there, right? Once you have the word go from God, you can run. And so David ran to the battle. He ran to the battle. He's going as fast as he can to Goliath. And of course, he reaching into his bag, takes out a stone. He slung it, struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead. He fell face down on the ground. Whoa. God did something that day. But I want you to see what happens when one person is bold Okay, that's cool, right? That God had David strike down Goliath. But it's never just about the one person. You see, when one person steps out in faith, just as fear is contagious, faith is also contagious. You see, when somebody has courage, you know what they can do? They can encourage somebody else. That's infusing somebody with courage, giving them hope. It happens in the natural. It happens in ball games all over the world. When one person has courage, they can therefore encourage. You know why most people aren't encouragers? Because they don't have any courage. They don't have any of the giddy up in them, so therefore they can't give it to somebody else. That's why most people are discouragers, because they're discouraged. But when you have courage, you can be the encourager, and when you have faith, you can build others' faith up. And so David, at this point, strikes down the Philistine, and watch what happens. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. For 40 days, these guys came out, and they were the big shots. One guy from Israel has faith, has courage, runs to the battle, strikes down their leader, and the courage of the Philistine falls. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines. Wait a minute. The Philistines were up here. The Israelites were down here. David, one guy with no encouragement from anybody else except the Lord, steps out, takes down Goliath. They lost their courage. These guys gained courage. They ran. They pursued. Everything's over. What I want you to see today is when you step out, you might be alone, but as God gains the victory, others will follow. It's what a leader is. A leader steps out. Even when other people say it's not going to work, you step out. Even other people say it's crazy. You're going to lose money on it. You're going to lose your car. You're going to lose your house. You're going to lose your family, whatever it is. But you know it's of God. Step out. Step out. All these people who are down here, they're there. They're awesome. They've just lost all courage. All they need is one person who has courage to do great things. And these people go, whoop, and then they pursue. And then the enemy is defeated. It's going to work in your life. I believe we'll see it in societies. We'll see it in culture. We'll see it in nations. We'll see it all over the world. But what it takes is for just a few great men and women who aren't even that great in the natural, but truly have the courage that comes from God, and the mighty army of God will raise up and will pursue the enemy if only the few would lead. God bless.